He sat there in the defendant's chair, smiling at the cameras outside the courthouse, repeating the same 7 words to anyone who would listen. I was nowhere near that place. Marcus Holt thought his alibi was bulletproof. He thought documenting every minute of his day, receipts, timestamps, witness statements, meant the truth was on his side. He even told reporters that the clock doesn't lie. But Marcus forgot one crucial detail about time itself. It only proves where you were if nothing unexpected happened. When the prosecutor's lawyer stood up and began asking questions that seemed to have nothing to do with the timeline, nobody understood what was happening. Until piece by piece, moment by moment, the perfect alibi began to crack under the weight of reality. You are about to witness the most methodical dismantling of an alibi in courtroom history. The air inside courtroom 3D of the King County Superior Court in Seattle was heavy with anticipation. The overhead lights hummed with a faint electrical buzz, casting harsh white light across the dark wood paneling and worn carpet. Outside, rain drummed steadily against the tall windows, typical November weather in the Pacific Northwest, creating a rhythmic backdrop to the proceedings. The courtroom smelled of damp wool coats, old paper, and the anxiety that comes before verdicts that will change lives. For Marcus Holt, however, the atmosphere smelled like vindication. Marcus sat at the defense table, flanked by his attorney, Gerald Finch, a criminal defense lawyer with 28 years of experience and a reputation for getting wealthy clients acquitted on technicalities. Gerald wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit and checked his watch, a vintage Omega Speedmaster, with the frequency of a man who understood that time was the foundation of his entire defense strategy. Marcus himself was dressed impeccably, a navy suit from Brooks Brothers, a crisp white shirt, and a burgundy tie. His dark hair was styled with just enough product to look professional without appearing vain. He had the kind of face that cameras loved, strong jawline, clear blue eyes, an easy smile. At 34, he was the founder of a successful tech startup called DataSync Solutions, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never failed at anything important. Every 15 minutes or so, Marcus would lean over to Gerald and whisper something, and both men would nod, satisfied. Marcus would glance at his watch, a matching Omega, a gift from Gerald after their first case together, and make a note on the legal pad in front of him. He wasn't nervous, he was meticulous. "Look at him," whispered one of the court reporters to her colleague during a break. "He acts like he's already won." "Maybe he has," the colleague replied. "His alibi is airtight. I've covered 50 trials. I've never seen anything like it." Across the aisle sat the prosecution team. At the center was Diana Reeves, the victim, though in this civil case she was technically the plaintiff. She was 31 years old, with shoulder-length auburn hair pulled back into a simple bun. She wore a modest gray dress and no jewelry except for a small silver cross on a chain. Her face was pale, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, staring at the table in front of her. Beside Diana sat her attorney, Catherine Wu. Catherine was 46 years old, of medium height, with black hair cut into a sharp bob. She wore a black pantsuit with a white blouse, minimal makeup, and rimless glasses that gave her an air of quiet intensity. She was not a flashy lawyer. She didn't pace the courtroom or raise her voice. She took notes in a small leather notebook, occasionally leaning over to whisper to Diana. But mostly she just watched the witnesses, watched the jury, watched Marcus. Catherine Wu had spent the last 3 months preparing for this trial, not by building elaborate theories or hiring expensive experts, but by doing something far more tedious. She had traced Marcus Holt's day, minute by minute, and she had found something everyone else had missed. But she wasn't ready to reveal it yet. "All rise," the bailiff announced. The Honorable Judge Patricia Moreno presiding. The courtroom stood. Judge Moreno entered, her black robes flowing behind her. She was a woman in her late 50s with gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She had been a Superior Court judge for 15 years and was known for her no-nonsense approach and her intolerance for theatrics. She sat down, adjusted her glasses, and opened the file in front of her. "Be seated," Judge Moreno said. The room sat. Judge Moreno looked at the packed gallery behind the bar. The case had drawn significant media attention. Diana Reeves was accusing Marcus Holt of breaking into her home, assaulting her, and stealing confidential documents related to a business dispute. Marcus denied everything. He claimed he was miles away at the time of the alleged incident, and he had the receipts to prove it. Case number 24208847-1CA, Judge Moreno read aloud, Reeves versus Holt. This is a civil action for assault, battery, trespass, and conversion. We are here for trial before a jury. She looked at the jury box, where 12 jurors and 2 alternates sat. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for your service. We'll now proceed with opening statements. Mr. Finch, you may begin. Gerald Finch rose smoothly. He buttoned his suit jacket and walked to the podium, carrying a single sheet of paper, not because he needed notes, but because it made him look prepared without seeming over-rehearsed. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Gerald began, his voice clear and authoritative. This case is not complicated. In fact, it's one of the simplest cases I've ever handled. Ms. Reeves claims that my client, Marcus Holt, broke into her home on the afternoon of September 14th of this year. She claims the incident occurred between 2 p.m. and 2:30 p.m. She claims my client assaulted her and stole documents from her home office. Gerald paused, letting the words hang in the air. There's only one problem with Ms. Reeves's claim. It's impossible. Physically, logistically, and factually impossible. He walked away from the podium, closer to the jury box. Ladies and gentlemen, my client was not at Ms. Reeves's home on September 14th. He was not within 5 miles of her home. In fact, he was on the other side of the city, and I can prove it to the minute. Gerald held up a piece of paper. At 1:47 p.m. on September 14th, Marcus Holt used his credit card at a Starbucks location on Pine Street in downtown Seattle. We have the receipt. We have the timestamp from the credit card transaction. We have surveillance video from inside the store showing Marcus ordering his coffee. He held up another document. At 2:05 p.m., Marcus was at his office building on 5th Avenue, approximately 3 miles from the Starbucks and 8 miles from Ms. Reeves's home in the Wallingford neighborhood. He swiped his security card to enter the building. We have the electronic log. We have surveillance footage from the lobby showing him entering the elevator. Gerald turned to face the gallery, then back to the jury. At 2:12 p.m., Marcus was on a video conference call with clients in New York. We have the call logs. We have emails confirming the meeting. We have testimony from 3 people who were on that call, all of whom will testify that Marcus was visibly in his office on camera for 45 minutes. He walked back to the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, the alleged assault occurred at 2:15 p.m. At 2:15 p.m., my client was on a video call, on camera, in his office, 8 miles away. Unless Marcus can teleport, he could not have been in 2 places at once. Gerald folded his hands on the podium. Ms. Reeves has been through a traumatic experience. Someone broke into her home. Someone assaulted her. But it wasn't Marcus Holt. Ms. Reeves is mistaken. Perhaps she misidentified her attacker. Perhaps she's confused about the timeline. Or perhaps, and I say this with all due respect, she has another motive for accusing my client. He returned to his seat. The evidence will show that Marcus Holt is innocent. Thank you. Marcus nodded, satisfied. He looked at the jury. Several jurors were nodding along. One juror, an older man in the back row, was writing notes. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Judge Moreno turned to the plaintiff's table. Ms. Wu, your opening statement. Catherine Wu stood up slowly. She didn't button her jacket. She didn't pick up notes. She just walked to the podium, her hands empty, her expression neutral. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, Catherine began, her voice quiet but clear. Mr. Finch is correct about one thing. This case is about time. Specifically, it's about the illusion of time. She paused. Mr. Finch just told you that Marcus Holt has an alibi. He told you about receipts, timestamps, security logs, video calls. He told you that it would be impossible for Marcus to be in 2 places at once. And if you believe that time works the way Mr. Finch described it, perfectly, predictably, like a machine, then Marcus Holt is innocent. Catherine walked slowly toward the jury box. But time doesn't work like a machine. Real life doesn't work like a spreadsheet. Things take longer than expected. Traffic happens, elevators break down, phone calls get interrupted. And when you build an alibi on the assumption that nothing unexpected will happen, the alibi falls apart the moment you look closely at what actually happened that day. She turned to face Marcus. Mr. Holt is very proud of his timeline. He's repeated it to the police, to reporters, to anyone who will listen. He can recite it by heart. 1:47 at Starbucks, 2:05 at the office, 2:12 on a video call. But here's the problem. People don't remember their days in timestamps. They remember them in sequences. First this happened, then that happened. If you ask someone what time they got coffee last Tuesday, they'll guess. But if you ask them what they did after they got coffee, they can tell you. Catherine returned to the podium. Marcus Holt doesn't remember his day in sequences. He remembers it in timestamps. And that's because his alibi isn't a memory. It's a construction. Over the next several days, I'm going to show you exactly how it was constructed. And I'm going to show you that when you remove the illusion of precision, when you account for the things that actually happened that day, the things Marcus conveniently forgot, the alibi disappears. She sat down. The courtroom was silent. Several jurors looked confused. One juror, a young woman in the front row, frowned and leaned forward slightly, as if trying to understand what Catherine had just said. Marcus leaned over to Gerald. "What the hell was that?" She didn't even make an argument. Gerald whispered back, "She's trying to confuse the jury. Don't worry, she has no evidence." But Catherine Wu did have evidence. She just wasn't ready to use it yet. Judge Moreno looked at Gerald. "Mr. Finch, call your first witness." The defense calls Marcus Holt to the stand. Marcus stood up. He buttoned his jacket and walked confidently to the witness stand. He was sworn in, and he sat down, crossing one leg over the other, looking relaxed and composed. Gerald approached the witness stand. "Mr. Holt, can you please state your occupation for the record?" "I'm the founder and CEO of DataSync Solutions, a software company that specializes in cloud-based data management." "And how long have you been in business?" 6 years. We started small, but we've grown significantly. We now have over 200 clients and 35 employees. Congratulations. Now, Mr. Holt, do you know the plaintiff, Diana Reeves? Marcus's face hardened slightly. "Yes, I know her." "How do you know her?" "Diana used to work for my company. She was a project manager. She left about 8 months ago." "Why did she leave?" "She was terminated." "Why was she terminated?" Marcus shifted in his seat. "Diana was caught stealing proprietary information. She was planning to start a competing business using our client lists and software designs. When we confronted her, she became hostile. We had no choice but to let her go." Catherine stood up. "Objection, hearsay, and relevance. Ms. Reeves's employment history is not on trial here." Judge Moreno looked at Gerald. "Mr. Finch, where are you going with this?" "Your Honor, I'm establishing motive. Ms. Reeves has every reason to fabricate these allegations against my client." Judge Moreno frowned. "Overruled, but move on quickly." Gerald nodded. "Mr. Holt, after Ms. Reeves was terminated, did she make any threats against you?" "Yes. She sent me several emails saying that I would regret firing her. She said she would ruin my reputation." "Do you have those emails?" "Yes, they're entered as Defense Exhibit 1. Gerald turned to the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, you'll see those emails during the course of this trial. But for now, let's focus on September 14th. Mr. Holt, can you describe your day?" Marcus nodded. He had rehearsed this part. "I woke up at 6:30 a.m. I went for a run in Green Lake Park. I got home around 7:45, showered, and left for the office around 8:30. I had meetings all morning. Around 1:30 p.m., I realized I hadn't eaten lunch, so I decided to grab a coffee and a sandwich." "Where did you go?" "Starbucks on Pine Street near my office." "What time did you arrive?" "I arrived at approximately 1:45 p.m. I ordered a grande latte and a turkey sandwich. I paid with my credit card at 1:47 p.m. "How do you know the exact time?" Marcus held up his phone. "I checked the receipt later. The timestamp is right there, 1:47 p.m. "What did you do after you got your coffee?" "I walked back to my office. It's about a 10-minute walk. I got there around 2 p.m. "What did you do when you arrived at your office?" "I swiped my security card to enter the building. The system logged my entry at 2:05 p.m. I took the elevator to the 4th floor, went to my office, and logged into my computer." "What happened next?" "At 2:12 p.m., I joined a scheduled video conference call with clients in New York. The call was supposed to start at 2 p.m., but I was a few minutes late because I had stopped for coffee." "How long was the call?" 45 minutes. It ended around 2:57 p.m. Gerald walked closer to the jury box. So, to be clear, at the time Ms. Reeves claims you were breaking into her home, 2:15 p.m., you were on a video call on camera in your office? That's correct. Is there any possibility that you could have left your office during the call? No, I was on camera the entire time. My clients can confirm that. Gerald returned to his table and picked up a stack of documents. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence defense exhibits 2 through 7, the Starbucks receipt, the credit card statement, the security log from Mr. Holt's office building, the video call log, and affidavits from 3 participants on the video call. Any objection, Ms. Wu? Judge Moreno asked. Catherine stood. No objection to the documents themselves, Your Honor, but I reserve the right to question their interpretation. Noted, the exhibits are admitted. Gerald turned back to Marcus. Mr. Holt, did you go to Diana Reeves's home on September 14th? No. Did you assault her? No. Did you steal documents from her home? No. Thank you, Mr. Holt. No further questions. Gerald returned to his seat, looking satisfied. Marcus relaxed slightly, uncrossing his legs. He looked at the jury. Several jurors were nodding. The older man in the back row was still taking notes. Judge Moreno turned to Catherine. Ms. Wu, you may cross-examine. Catherine stood up. She picked up her small leather notebook and walked slowly toward the witness stand. She didn't look at Marcus yet. She looked down at her notes, flipping through pages, as if searching for something specific. When she finally looked up, her expression was neutral, almost friendly. Mr. Holt, Catherine began, her voice calm. You said you woke up at 6:30 a.m. on September 14th. Is that correct? Yes. Do you remember that time specifically, or is that just your usual routine? Marcus frowned slightly. That's when I usually wake up. I assume it was the same that day. But you don't remember specifically looking at a clock at 6:30 a.m.? No, I just know I wake up around that time. Catherine made a note. You said you went for a run in Green Lake Park. How long was the run? About 45 minutes. And you got home at 7:45? Approximately. Did you check the time when you got home? Marcus hesitated. I think so. I usually check my phone after a run to see my stats. But you don't specifically remember checking the time that morning? Not specifically, no. Catherine nodded slowly. You said you left for the office around 8:30 a.m. Do you remember what time you actually left? Around 8:30. But you don't know the exact time? No. Mr. Holt, you seem very certain about the times after 1:47 p.m., when you got coffee, when you entered your office, when you started your video call. But you're less certain about the times before that. Why is that? Marcus shifted in his seat. Because the times after 1:47 are documented. I have receipts and logs. But you don't have receipts or logs for the morning? No, I didn't think I would need them. So the times in the morning are estimates? Yes. Catherine made another note. Let's talk about the Starbucks. You said you arrived at approximately 1:45 p.m. and paid at 1:47 p.m. Is that correct? Yes. How long does it usually take you to order and pay for coffee at that location? Marcus shrugged. A couple of minutes. It depends on the line. Was there a line that day? Marcus paused. I don't remember. You don't remember if there was a line? No, I was thinking about work. I wasn't paying attention. Catherine tilted her head. But you remember the exact time you paid? Yes, because I have the receipt. Right, the receipt. Mr. Holt, how often do you keep your receipts? I don't usually keep them, but I kept this one because of this case. So you went back and found the receipt after Ms. Reeves accused you? Yes. How did you find it? Did you have it in your wallet? Marcus hesitated. No, I requested it from Starbucks. They can pull up transactions based on credit card numbers. Catherine nodded slowly. So you didn't have the receipt at the time. You reconstructed it later? I didn't reconstruct it. I requested a copy of a real transaction. Fair enough. Let's move on. You said you walked back to your office after getting coffee. You said it's about a 10-minute walk? Yes. But you arrived at 2:05, which is 18 minutes after you paid for your coffee. If it's a 10-minute walk, why did it take you 18 minutes? Marcus blinked. I don't know. Maybe I stopped somewhere. Where did you stop? I don't remember. You don't remember? No, it was months ago. Catherine made a note. Mr. Holt, you said you swiped your security card at 2:05 p.m. Is that the first time you swiped it that day? Yes, I left the office earlier that morning and hadn't returned yet. And the security system logged your entry at 2:05. Yes. Do you know if the security system is accurate? Marcus frowned. What do you mean? I mean, is the timestamp on the security system synchronized with an official time source? Or could it be off by a minute or two? I don't know. I assume it's accurate. But you don't know for certain? No. Catherine nodded. You said you took the elevator to the 4th floor. How long did that take? Marcus shrugged. I don't know. A minute? Did you stop on any other floors? I don't remember. You don't remember if the elevator stopped? No. Mr. Holt, let me ask you this. On a normal day, how often do you check the time? Marcus looked confused by the question. I don't know. A few times? A few times an hour? A few times a day? I guess a few times an hour. I wear a watch. But on September 14th, you didn't check the time when you woke up. You didn't check the time when you got home from your run. You didn't check the time when you left for work, and you didn't check the time when you walked from Starbucks to your office. Is that correct? Marcus's jaw tightened. I didn't think it was important. But you do remember the time you paid for coffee, the time you entered your building, and the time you started your video call? Yes, because those are documented. Catherine closed her notebook. Mr. Holt, isn't it true that you only remember the times that are convenient for your alibi? Gerald shot to his feet. Objection. Argumentative. Judge Moreno looked at Catherine. Sustained. Rephrase Ms. Wu. Catherine nodded. Mr. Holt, did you write down your timeline before or after Ms. Reeves accused you? Marcus hesitated. After. How long after? A few days. And did you reconstruct the timeline based on your memory or based on documents? Based on documents. So your memory of that day is not independent. It's based on receipts and logs that you collected after the fact? Marcus's face flushed. I remembered the day. The documents just confirmed what I already knew. Catherine smiled slightly. We'll see about that. No further questions for now, Your Honor. She returned to her seat. Marcus looked rattled. He glanced at Gerald, who gave him a reassuring nod, but Marcus didn't look reassured. Judge Moreno looked at the clock. We'll take a 15-minute recess. When we return, Mr. Finch, you may call your next witness. The gavel banged. During the recess, Marcus stood in the hallway with Gerald. She's trying to make me look like I'm lying, Marcus said, his voice tight with frustration. She's grasping at straws, Gerald replied. She has no evidence. All she can do is create doubt. But the jury saw the receipts. They saw the security logs. They know you were on that video call. Her questions don't change the facts. Marcus nodded, but he didn't look convinced. Inside the courtroom, Catherine sat with Diana at the plaintiff's table. Diana leaned over and whispered, Do you really think you can prove it? Catherine looked at her client. I don't need to prove he was there at 2:15. I just need to prove he could have been. Once the jury understands that his timeline isn't as airtight as he claims, they'll start to question everything. But what about the video call? Catherine smiled. Let me worry about the video call. 15 minutes later, the trial resumed. Gerald stood and announced his next witness. The defense calls Jennifer Park to the stand. A woman in her late 20s walked into the courtroom. She had long black hair, wore a Navy business suit, and carried herself with the nervous energy of someone who wasn't used to testifying. She was sworn in and took her seat. Gerald approached. Ms. Park, can you state your occupation? I'm an account manager at DataSync Solutions. I've worked there for 3 years. And on September 14th of this year, were you on a video conference call with Mr. Holt? Yes. What time did the call start? It was scheduled for 2 p.m., but it actually started a few minutes late, around 2:12 p.m. Why did it start late? Marcus, Mr. Holt, was running a few minutes behind. He said he had stopped for coffee. And was Mr. Holt on camera during the call? Yes, the entire time. How long was the call? About 45 minutes. It ended just before 3 p.m. And during those 45 minutes, did Mr. Holt leave the camera frame at any point? No, he was there the whole time. Gerald nodded, satisfied. Thank you, Ms. Park. No further questions. Judge Moreno turned to Catherine. Ms. Wu, your witness. Catherine stood up. She picked up her notebook and walked toward the witness stand. Ms. Park, Catherine began, You said the call was scheduled for 2 p.m. but started at 2:12 p.m. Is that correct? Yes. Do you know why Mr. Holt was late? He said he had stopped for coffee. Did he say what time he stopped for coffee? No. Did he say where he stopped? No, he just said he had grabbed coffee. Catherine nodded. Ms. Park, during the call, was Mr. Holt's camera on the entire time? Yes. Could you see his entire body or just his face and upper torso? Jennifer frowned. Just his face and upper torso. It's a standard webcam. So you couldn't see if he was sitting or standing? No. Could you see if anyone else was in the room with him? No. Could you see what he was doing with his hands? Not really. His hands were mostly out of frame. Catherine made a note. Ms. Park, how well do you know Mr. Holt? I work for him. I've known him for 3 years. Would you say you have a good working relationship? Yes. Has he ever asked you to do something outside of your job description? Jennifer hesitated. I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, has he ever asked you for a favor? I guess, sometimes. That's normal in a small company. Has he ever asked you to lie for him? Gerald stood up. Objection. Assumes facts, not an evidence. Judge Moreno looked at Catherine. Ms. Wu, do you have a basis for this question? I'll connect it, Your Honor. Make it quick. Catherine turned back to Jennifer. Ms. Park, did Mr. Holt ever discuss this lawsuit with you before you testified today? Jennifer's face flushed. He mentioned it. What did he say? He said that Ms. Reeves was making false accusations and that he needed people to confirm where he was that day. Did he tell you what to say? No, he just reminded me about the call. Reminded you or told you what happened? Jennifer shifted uncomfortably. He reminded me. Ms. Park, when did you first learn that you would be testifying in this case? About a week ago. And before that, did you remember the video call on September 14th? Jennifer hesitated. Not specifically. I mean, we have a lot of calls. So you didn't remember the call until Mr. Holt reminded you about it. I remembered it after he reminded me. Catherine nodded slowly. Ms. Park, during the call, did anything unusual happen? No, it was a normal client meeting. Do you remember what was discussed? We were discussing a project timeline for one of our clients. Do you remember which client? Jennifer paused. I don't remember the name. You don't remember which client you were discussing? No, like I said, we have a lot of clients. But you remember that Mr. Holt was on camera the entire time? Yes. How can you remember that detail but not remember which client you were discussing? Jennifer looked flustered. I remember Marcus being there. Catherine closed her notebook. Ms. Park, isn't it true that you don't actually remember this call? You're just repeating what Mr. Holt told you? No, I remember the call. What was Mr. Holt wearing? Jennifer blinked. What? What was Mr. Holt wearing during the call? I don't remember. Was he wearing a tie? I don't know. Was he wearing a jacket? I don't know. Ms. Park, if you were on a 45-minute video call with Mr. Holt, and you remember him being on camera the entire time, surely you remember something about what he looked like. Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper. I don't remember. Catherine looked at the jury, letting the moment sink in. No further questions. Jennifer was excused. She walked out of the courtroom quickly, her face red with embarrassment. Gerald stood up again. The defense calls David Chen to the stand. Another witness walked in. David was in his mid-30s, wearing a gray suit. He was sworn in and sat down. Gerald approached. Mr. Chen, were you also on the video call with Mr. Holt on September 14th? Yes. And can you confirm that Mr. Holt was on camera the entire time? Yes. I was looking at his face for 45 minutes. He didn't leave. Gerald smiled. Thank you. No further questions. Catherine stood up. She walked toward the witness stand with the same calm, methodical pace. Mr. Chen, Catherine began, what time zone are you in? David frowned. Eastern time. I work out of our New York office. So, when the call started at 2:12 p.m. Seattle time, what time? Was it in New York? 5:12 p.m. And you're certain the call started at 2:12 p.m. Seattle time? Yes, that's what my calendar said. Did you check your watch when the call started? No. So you're relying on your calendar? Yes. Mr. Chen, is your calendar synced to a specific time zone? David hesitated. It's synced to my local time zone, Eastern Time. So, if the meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. Seattle time, your calendar would have shown it as 5 p.m. Eastern? Yes. And did the call start at 5 p.m. Eastern? No, it started a few minutes late. How late? I don't know exactly. A few minutes. Could it have been 10 minutes late? Maybe. Could it have been 15 minutes late? I don't think so. But you don't know for certain? No. Catherine made a note. Mr. Chen, you said you were looking at Mr. Holt's face for 45 minutes. Did you look at him the entire time? Or did you also look at your screen, your notes, other participants? David shifted. I mean, I looked at other things too, but I saw him on camera. But you weren't staring at him for 45 minutes straight. No. So if he had stepped away from the camera for a minute or two, you might not have noticed? I think I would have noticed. But you're not certain? I'm reasonably certain. Reasonably certain is not the same as certain, is it? David didn't answer. No further questions. Gerald called his third witness from the video call. The defense calls Maria Rodriguez to the stand. Maria Rodriguez walked into the courtroom. She was in her early 40s, wearing a burgundy suit, her dark hair pulled back in a professional bun. She had worked with Data Sync Solutions for 5 years as a senior project manager. She was sworn in and took her seat. Gerald approached with confidence. Ms. Rodriguez, were you on the video conference call with Mr. Holt on September 14th? Yes, I was. And what was your role in that call? I was presenting project updates to our New York clients. Marcus, Mr. Holt, was supervising the presentation. Was Mr. Holt visible on camera during the entire call? Yes, I could see him the whole time. He was sitting at his desk, occasionally taking notes. Did he ever leave the frame? No, not that I noticed. How certain are you of that? Maria looked directly at the jury. I'm very certain. I was nervous about the presentation, and I kept looking at Marcus for reassurance. He was there the entire time. Gerald smiled. Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. No further questions. Catherine stood up. She walked slowly toward the witness stand, her notebook in hand. Ms. Rodriguez, Catherine began, you said you were nervous about the presentation. Is that correct? Yes. And you said you kept looking at Mr. Holt for reassurance. Yes. So you were focused on your presentation and your nerves, but you were also monitoring Mr. Holt's reactions? I was multitasking, yes. That must have been stressful. It was. Catherine nodded sympathetically. Ms. Rodriguez, during the presentation, did you share your screen? Maria paused. Yes, I was showing PowerPoint slides. And when you share your screen on a video call, what happens to the other participants' video feeds? They get smaller. They move to the side of the screen. So Mr. Holt's video feed would have been in a small box on the side of your screen? Yes. And how big was that box? A few inches? Yes, maybe 3 inches across. And you were looking at that 3-inch box while also presenting slides, reading notes, and managing your nerves. Maria's confidence wavered. I was aware he was there. But were you staring at that 3-inch box continuously for 45 minutes? No, not continuously. So, if Mr. Holt had stepped away from his camera for a minute or two, and if you had been focused on your slides during that time, you might not have noticed? Maria hesitated. I suppose it's possible. Ms. Rodriguez, you testified that you could see Mr. Holt taking notes occasionally. Did you actually see his hands moving, or did you just assume he was taking notes? I saw him looking down, as if he was writing. But you couldn't actually see his hands? No, the camera only showed his face and upper body. So he could have been looking down at his phone, or at nothing at all? I suppose. Catherine pulled out a document. Ms. Rodriguez, this is a transcript of the video call, automatically generated by the Zoom platform. It shows who spoke and when. Can you tell me how many times Mr. Holt spoke during the 45-minute call? Maria looked at the transcript. It says 3 times. 3 times in 45 minutes. And what did he say? Maria read from the transcript. He said, sounds good, at 2:24. He said, let's move to the next item at 2:41. And he said, thanks everyone, at 2:56. So Mr. Holt spoke for a total of perhaps 10 seconds during a 45-minute call? Yes. And the rest of the time, he was just sitting there, visible on camera, but not actively participating? He was supervising, or he was absent and no one noticed because he rarely speaks during these calls anyway. Gerald stood up. Objection, argumentative. Judge Moreno nodded. Sustained. Catherine turned back to Maria. Ms. Rodriguez, do you have any way to prove that Mr. Holt was actually at his desk during the entire call, beyond the fact that his video feed showed his face? Maria looked uncomfortable. No. Thank you. No further questions. Maria was excused. She walked out of the courtroom, looking shaken. Gerald called his fourth witness, a man named Thomas Bradford, who was also on the video call. Catherine's cross-examination followed the same pattern, revealing that Thomas had been focused on his own tasks during the call and couldn't definitively say whether Marcus had been present the entire time or just had his camera on. By the end of the day, the pattern was clear. Everyone assumed Marcus had been on the call because his video feed was active, but no one could actually prove he'd been sitting at his desk for the entire 45 minutes. Judge Moreno looked at the clock. We'll adjourn for the day. We'll resume tomorrow at 9 a.m. The gavel banged. That evening, Marcus sat in his apartment, pacing back and forth. Gerald sat on the couch, his tie loosened, reviewing his notes. She's trying to confuse the jury, Gerald said, but she hasn't presented any evidence. She's just asking questions. It's working, Marcus said, his voice tight. I could see it. The jury is starting to doubt. They're not doubting the facts. They're doubting the details. There's a difference. Tomorrow we'll call the IT expert to testify about the security logs. We'll call the Starbucks manager to confirm the receipt. By the end of the week, the jury will see that your alibi is rock solid. Marcus stopped pacing. He looked out the window at the Seattle skyline. The Space Needle lit up against the dark sky. What if she knows something we don't? Like what? I don't know, but she's too confident. She's not acting like someone who's losing. Gerald stood up and walked over to Marcus. Marcus, listen to me. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. I know when a lawyer is bluffing, and I know when they have something. Catherine Wu is fishing. She's hoping you'll crack, hoping she'll get lucky. But she doesn't have anything concrete. Your alibi is documented. The video call is recorded. The security logs are clear. She can ask all the questions she wants, but she can't change the facts. Marcus nodded slowly, but the unease didn't leave his face. What about the computer activity log she mentioned? Where did that come from? I don't know yet. My investigator is looking into it. But even if it exists, there are innocent explanations. Maybe your computer went into sleep mode. Maybe you were reading something on your screen without touching the keyboard. It doesn't prove anything. But it creates doubt. Doubt isn't enough. She needs to prove you were at Diana's house. She can't do that. Marcus turned away from the window. I'm going to bed. We have a long day tomorrow. After Gerald left, Marcus sat alone in his dark apartment. He pulled out his phone and opened his calendar app. He scrolled back to September 14th and stared at his schedule. 2 p.m., video call with NY clients. He remembered that day clearly, or did he? He remembered getting coffee at Starbucks. He remembered walking back to the office. He remembered swiping his card. But the details in between, the walk itself, whether he'd stopped anywhere, whether he'd checked his phone, those details were fuzzy. He'd reconstructed the timeline based on the receipts and logs, filling in the gaps with assumptions about what he must have done. But what if he hadn't done? What he thought he'd done? Marcus shook his head, trying to clear the doubt. No. He knew where he'd been. He'd been in his office. He'd been on that video call. Diana was lying. She had to be lying. He closed his phone and went to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. Across town, Catherine Wu sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by papers. Her laptop was open, showing a spreadsheet with timestamps, locations, and travel times. She'd spent the past 3 months building this case, not by finding dramatic evidence, but by doing something far more tedious. She'd mapped out every minute of Marcus Holt's day and looked for the gaps. The gaps were there, small ones, a minute here, 2 minutes there. Moments that Marcus had smoothed over in his narrative, assuming they didn't matter. But they did matter, because those small gaps added up. And when you added them together, they created a window, a narrow window, but a window nonetheless, during which Marcus could have left his office, driven to Diana's house, committed the assault, and returned. Catherine's phone rang. It was her investigator, a former police detective named Ray Tomlin. I've got something, Ray said without preamble. I talked to the parking attendant at Marcus's office building. He remembers September 14th. What does he remember? He remembers Marcus's car leaving the garage around 2:10 and returning around 2:35. Catherine sat up straighter. Is he certain about the times? He's certain about the car leaving and coming back. He noticed because Marcus usually doesn't leave the office in the middle of the day. As for the exact times, he's less certain, but he remembers it was after 2 gallons and before 3 guy. Will he testify? He's nervous. He doesn't want to lose his job. Marcus is one of the building's biggest tenants. I'll get him a subpoena. He won't have a choice. Catherine, are you sure about this? If you're wrong? I'm not wrong, Ray. Marcus left his office that day. It went to Diana's house, and I'm going to prove it. She hung up and added a new note to her spreadsheet. Parking attendant. Marcus's car left 2:10, returned 2:35. The window was getting clearer. The next morning, the trial resumed. Gerald called his IT expert, a man named Trevor Walsh, who testified about the security logs from Marcus's office building. He confirmed that the logs showed Marcus entering the building at 2:05 p.m. Catherine cross-examined him. Mr. Walsh, Catherine began, you said the security logs show Mr. Holt entering the building at 2:05 p.m. Is that correct? Yes. And the security system is linked to a time server? Yes. Which time server? Trevor pulled out a document. The system uses NTP, Network Time Protocol. It syncs with a time server operated by the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And is that time server accurate? Within milliseconds. Catherine nodded. But the security card reader itself, the physical device, does it sync in real time, or does it sync periodically? Trevor frowned. It syncs periodically, usually once every 24 hours. So, if the card reader's internal clock was off by a minute or two, it wouldn't correct itself until the next sync? That's correct, but the drift is usually negligible. Usually, but not always? Not always. Mr. Walsh, do you know when the card reader last synced before September 14th? Trevor looked at his notes. I don't have that information. So you can't say with certainty that the card reader was accurate to the second on September 14th. I can say it was accurate within a reasonable margin of error. What's a reasonable margin of error? A minute or two? Catherine smiled. A minute or two. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Ms. Wu, I have another question, Judge Moreno interjected. Mr. Walsh, these security logs, do they show when someone exits the building as well? Trevor shifted uncomfortably. Yes, Your Honor. The system logs, both entries and exits. And did you review the exit logs for Mr. Holt on September 14th? Trevor glanced at Gerald, who looked suddenly tense. I did review them, yes. And what did they show? They showed that Mr. Holt exited the building at 2:09 p.m. and re-entered at 2:34 p.m. The courtroom erupted. Gerald shot to his feet. Your Honor, that information was not in Mr. Walsh's report. Judge Moreno's face hardened. Mr. Finch approached the bench. Ms. Wu, you too. At the bench, Judge Moreno's voice was low and furious. Mr. Finch, did you instruct your expert to omit the exit logs from his report? Gerald's face was flushed. Your Honor, I asked Mr. Walsh to focus on the entry time because that's what establishes when Mr. Holt arrived at the office. That's not what I asked you. Did you know about the exit logs? Gerald hesitated. Yes. And you chose not to disclose them? Your Honor, the exit logs are irrelevant. Mr. Holt could have stepped out for any number of reasons. That's for the jury to decide, not you. Ms. Wu, did you know about these exit logs? Catherine nodded. Yes, Your Honor. I subpoenaed the complete security records from the building. I received them 2 days ago. Why didn't you disclose them to Mr. Finch? Because Mr. Finch had the same records, Your Honor. They were produced in discovery. He chose to present only part of the evidence. Judge Moreno turned back to Gerald. Mr. Finch, I'm not going to declare a mistrial, but I'm putting you on notice. If you pull another stunt like this, there will be consequences. Step back. They returned to their positions. Judge Moreno addressed the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard testimony that Mr. Holt exited his office building at 2:09 p.m. and returned at 2:34 p.m. That's 25 minutes unaccounted for. Keep that in mind as you hear the rest of the evidence. Catherine turned back to Trevor Walsh. Mr. Walsh, you testified that Mr. Holt exited the east building at 2:09 p.m. Is there any other information in the security logs that might be relevant? Trevor looked miserable. The parking garage logs also show that Mr. Holt's vehicle exited at 2:11 p.m. and returned at 2:33 p.m. So Mr. Holt didn't just step outside for fresh air. He got in his car and drove somewhere. That's what the logs indicate. And this entire time, he was supposed to be on a video conference call? I can't speak to that. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. No further questions. Gerald stood for redirect, but there was nothing he could say to undo the damage. Trevor Walsh was excused. Gerald then called the manager of the Starbucks location, a woman named Sandra Cho. She was in her 30s, wearing a green Starbucks apron over a white shirt. Ms. Cho, Gerald began, are you familiar with the Starbucks location on Pine Street? Yes, I'm the store manager. I've worked there for 6 years. On September 14th of this year, do you recall serving Mr. Holt? Sandra looked at Marcus. I don't recall him specifically, but I can confirm that according to our records, a transaction was made with his credit card at 1:47 p.m. And are your transaction timestamps accurate? Yes, they're synced with our payment processing system. Thank you, Ms. Cho. Catherine stood up for cross-examination. Ms. Cho, you said you don't actually remember Mr. Holt being in your store that day? No, we serve hundreds of customers a day. So, you're relying entirely on the electronic record? Yes. Ms. Cho, is it possible for someone to use a credit card without being physically present? Sandra frowned. What do you mean? I mean, could someone give their credit card to another person to make a purchase? I suppose, but that would be unusual. Unusual, but possible. Yes. And your store has several employees working at any given time? Yes, usually 3 or 4 during the lunch rush. So if someone handed a credit card to an employee, and that employee ran it through the system, the timestamp would show the transaction, but it wouldn't prove who actually made the purchase. That's correct, but thank you, Ms. Cho. No further questions. Sandra was excused. Gerald looked frustrated. Every witness he called seemed to create more questions than answers. The defense calls Robert Chen to the stand, Gerald announced. A young man in his 20s walked into the courtroom. He wore jeans and a hoodie, clearly uncomfortable in the formal setting. He was sworn in and sat down. Mr. Chen, Gerald began, what is your occupation? I'm a parking attendant at the Fifth Avenue office building where Mr. Holt works. Gerald's face tightened. This wasn't his witness. Catherine must have subpoenaed him. Judge Moreno looked at Gerald. Mr. Finch, is this your witness? No, Your Honor. I didn't call him. Catherine stood up. Your Honor, I subpoenaed Mr. Chen. If Mr. Finch is finished with his witnesses, I'd like to begin presenting my case. Gerald looked at his notes. He had planned to call 2 more witnesses, but after the disaster with Trevor Walsh, he decided to cut his losses. The defense rests, Your Honor. Judge Moreno nodded. Ms. Wu, you may proceed. Catherine walked toward the witness stand. Mr. Chen, you work as a parking attendant at Mr. Holt's office building? Yes. And were you working on September 14th? Yes. I work Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Do you remember that day specifically? I do now. After I got the subpoena, I checked my logs. What did your logs show? They showed that Mr. Holt's car, a black Tesla Model S, left the garage at 2:11 p.m. and returned at 2:33 p.m. How do you know it was his car? Every car has an assigned parking spot. His spot is number 47. The logs track when cars enter and exit each spot. Mr. Chen, do you remember seeing Mr. Holt's car leave that day? Robert shifted in his seat. I remember seeing a black Tesla leave around that time. I noticed because Mr. Holt usually doesn't leave during the workday. Did you see who was driving? No, the garage is dimly lit, and I was in the booth. I just saw the car. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Gerald stood up for cross-examination. Mr. Chen, you said you saw a black Tesla. Are you certain it was Mr. Holt's car? The logs show his parking spot was vacated at 2:11. But you didn't actually see Mr. Holt driving it? No? So someone else could have taken his car? I suppose, but that would be unusual. Unusual, but possible? Robert nodded reluctantly. Yes. Thank you. No further questions. But the damage was done. The jury had heard that Marcus's car left the building during the exact time window when Diana was assaulted. By the end of the second day, the narrative had shifted. What had started as an airtight alibi was now full of holes. The video call participants couldn't confirm Marcus had been at his desk the entire time. The security log showed he'd left the building. The parking attendant confirmed his car had been gone for 22 minutes. On the third day, Catherine began presenting her case. The plaintiff calls Diana Reeves to the stand. Diana stood up slowly. She walked to the witness stand, her hands trembling. She was sworn in and sat down. Catherine approached gently. "Ms. Reeves, can you describe what happened on September 14th? Diana's voice was quiet but steady. "I was at home, working in my office. It was around 2 p.m. I heard a noise downstairs. I thought it was my cat. But when I went to check, I saw someone in my living room. It was Marcus." "Are you certain it was Marcus?" "Yes, I worked with him for 2 years. I know what he looks like." "What happened next?" "I confronted him. I asked him what he was doing in my house. He didn't answer. He just grabbed me and pushed me against the wall. He hit me." Diana's voice broke. "He took my laptop from my office. He said if I told anyone, he would make sure I never worked in this industry again. Then he left." "What time did he leave?" "I don't know exactly. It all happened so fast. Maybe 2:20, 2:25. Catherine nodded. "Ms. Reeves, did you call the police?" "Yes, right after he left." "And what did the police say?" "They took my statement. They asked if I had any evidence. I didn't. There were no cameras, no witnesses. It was my word against his." Catherine pulled out a document. "Ms. Reeves, you said Marcus took your laptop. Was there anything important on that laptop?" "Yes, I had been documenting Marcus's business practices. I had evidence that he was defrauding clients. I was planning to report him." Gerald stood up. "Objection, hearsay and speculation." Judge Moreno looked at Catherine. "Ms. Wu, do you have evidence of fraud?" "Not yet, Your Honor, but I'm establishing motive. Mr. Holt had a reason to break into Ms. Reeves's home. I'll allow it, but you need to back it up with evidence." Catherine turned back to Diana. "Ms. Reeves, do you still have copies of those documents?" "Yes, I backed them up to a cloud server. We'll be entering those documents into evidence later." Catherine paused. "Ms. Reeves, I want to ask you about the moment Marcus grabbed you. Can you describe it in detail?" Diana took a shaky breath. "He came at me quickly. He used his right hand to grab my left arm. His grip was very tight. He pushed me backward until my back hit the wall near the staircase. Then he raised his right hand and hit me across the face with an open palm." "Did you try to defend yourself?" "I tried to push him away, but he's much stronger than I am. I'm 5'4" and weigh about 120 pounds. Marcus is over 6 feet and probably weighs 190 pounds. "What happened after he hit you?" "I fell to the floor. I was dazed. He walked past me, up the stairs to my office. I heard him moving things around. Then he came back down with my laptop. He stood over me and said, 'You brought this on yourself.' Then he left through the front door. And you called 911 immediately?" "Not immediately. I was scared. I sat on the floor for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, trying to process what had happened. Then I called 911. Catherine pulled out a photograph. "Ms. Reeves, I'm showing you Plaintiff's Exhibit 3. Can you identify this?" Diana looked at the photo, and tears immediately filled her eyes. "That's me. That's a photo I took of myself about an hour after Marcus left." "Can you describe what the photo shows?" "It shows a bruise on my left cheek, where he hit me, and it shows bruises on my left arm, where he grabbed me." Catherine turned to the jury, holding up the photograph. Several jurors leaned forward to look. The image showed Diana's face, with a visible red mark across her cheek and her arm, with dark finger-shaped bruises. "Your Honor, I'd like to enter Plaintiff's Exhibit 3 into evidence." "Any objection?" Judge Moreno asked. Gerald stood. "No objection to the photo, Your Honor, but we dispute that Mr. Holt caused those injuries." "Noted. The exhibit is admitted." Catherine turned back to Diana. "Ms. Reeves, did you seek medical attention?" "Not right away. I was too scared. But 3 days later, the bruises were getting worse, so I went to a clinic. The doctor documented the injuries and took additional photographs." "And are those photographs available?" "Yes. They're Exhibit 4. Catherine entered the medical photographs into evidence. Then she asked, "Ms. Reeves, I need to ask you something difficult. Is there any possibility that you're mistaken about who attacked you?" Diana looked directly at the jury. "No, it was Marcus. I saw his face. I heard his voice. I know it was him." "Thank you, Ms. Reeves." Gerald stood up to cross-examine. He approached slowly, his tone careful and measured. "Ms. Reeves, I'm sorry for what happened to you, but I need to ask you some questions about your identification of my client. Diana nodded. You said the attack happened around 2:30 p.m. Is that correct? Yes. And the 911 call log shows you called at 2:27 p.m., so approximately 27 minutes passed between the attack and your call. I think so, yes. During that time, were you in shock? Yes, I was terrified. And when you're in shock, your memory can be unreliable, can't it? I know what I saw. But you were scared, you were in pain, you had just been attacked. Isn't it possible that in that state, you misidentified your attacker? Diana's voice was firm. I worked with Marcus for 2 years. I saw him every day. I didn't misidentify him. Gerald pulled out a document. Ms. Reeves, you testified that you were documenting Mr. Holt's alleged fraud, but you were terminated from Data Sync Solutions for cause, weren't you? Marcus says I was terminated for cause, but that's not true. You were accused of stealing proprietary information. I was documenting illegal activity. There's a difference. But you did take company documents without authorization? I took copies of documents that showed Marcus was defrauding clients. I was going to report him to the authorities. So you had a motive to harm my client's reputation? Diana's voice rose. He attacked me. This isn't about revenge. It's about justice. Gerald held up his hands. Ms. Reeves, I'm not suggesting you're lying. I'm suggesting you're mistaken. You wanted it to be Marcus. You expected it to be Marcus. And so, when someone broke into your home, your mind filled in the blanks. That's not what happened. But you can't prove it was Marcus, can you? You have no video, no witnesses, no physical evidence linking him to the scene. I have my testimony, which is based on a traumatic memory formed while you were in shock. Catherine stood up. Objection. Asked and answered. Mr. Finch is badgering the witness. Judge Moreno nodded. Sustained. Move on, Mr. Finch. Gerald returned to his seat. No further questions. Diana was excused. She walked back to the plaintiff's table, wiping her eyes. Catherine put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Catherine called her next witness. The plaintiff calls Linda Martinez to the stand. An older woman walked into the courtroom. She was in her 60s with gray hair and kind eyes. She wore a simple floral dress. She was sworn in and sat down. Ms. Martinez, Catherine began. How do you know Ms. Reeves? I'm her neighbor. I live in the house directly across the street from her. And were you home on September 14th? Yes, I was in my front yard, gardening. I spend most afternoons in my garden. Did you see anything unusual that day? Yes, around 2:15 or 2:20, I saw a black car pull up in front of Diana's house. A man got out and walked to her front door. Can you describe the man? He was tall, maybe 6 feet. He had dark hair. He wore a suit, dark blue or black, I think. Did you recognize him? No, I'd never seen him before. What did you do? I watched for a moment. He knocked on the door, but Diana didn't answer. Then he tried the door handle, and it opened. He went inside. Did you think that was strange? Yes. I thought maybe he was a friend or a relative, but something felt off. He kept looking around like he didn't want to be seen. What happened next? I went back to my gardening, but I kept an eye on the house. About 10 minutes later, the man came out. He was carrying something. Looked like a laptop. He got back in his car and drove away quickly. Did you get a look at the license plate? No, I didn't think to look. Ms. Martinez, I'm going to show you a photograph. Catherine held up a picture of Marcus. Have you ever seen this man before? Linda looked at the photo carefully. He looks like the man I saw that day. The height is right. The build is right. But I can't say for certain. I was across the street, and I'm 67 years old. My eyes aren't what they used to be. But you're certain you saw someone enter Ms. Reeves's home and leave with a laptop? Yes, I'm certain of that. And what time was this? Around 2:15 to 2:30. I remember because my favorite show comes on at 2. And I always finish my gardening before then, so I can watch it. But that day I stayed outside a little longer because the weather was nice. Did you tell anyone what you saw? I told the police when they came to Diana's house later that day. They took my statement. Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Gerald stood up. Ms. Martinez, you said you couldn't identify my client with certainty? That's correct. And you're 67 years old with imperfect eyesight? Yes. So your identification is unreliable? I know what I saw. A man entered Diana's house and left with her laptop. But you can't say it was Marcus Holt? I can't say for certain, no. Thank you. No further questions. Linda was excused. The next witness, Catherine called, was a forensic analyst named Dr. Sarah Kim, who testified about the timing of Diana's 911 call. Dr. Kim testified that based on Diana's emotional state and the content of the call, the assault likely occurred no more than 5 to 10 minutes before the call was placed. That would place the assault between 2:17 and 2:22 p.m., Dr. Kim concluded. Then Catherine called her key witness. The plaintiff calls Dr. Raymond Cho to the stand. An older man walked into the courtroom. He was in his 60s with gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a tweed jacket and carried a leather briefcase. He was sworn in and sat down. Catherine approached. Dr. Cho, can you state your occupation? I'm a professor of computer science at the University of Washington. I specialize in digital forensics and data analysis. Have you reviewed the evidence in this case? Yes, you asked me to analyze the metadata from the video conference call on September 14th, as well as the activity logs from Mr. Holt's computer. And what did you find? Dr. Cho pulled out a report. The video call was conducted using a platform called Zoom. Zoom records metadata for every call, including timestamps for when participants join and leave, as well as when they activate or deactivate their cameras and microphones. And what did the metadata show? According to the metadata, Marcus Holt joined the call at 2:14 p.m. and left at 2:58 p.m. Catherine nodded. Dr. Cho, Mr. Holt testified that the call started at 2:12 p.m., but the metadata shows he joined at 2:14 p.m. Can you explain the discrepancy? There could be several explanations. The call may have started at 2:12, but Mr. Holt didn't join until 2:14, or the timestamp could be off by a minute or two due to synchronization issues. Is there any way to know for certain? Not from the metadata alone. Catherine pulled out another document. Dr. Cho, I'd like you to look at this. This is a log from Mr. Holt's office. Computer. It shows when his computer was actively being used. Can you tell the jury what it shows? Dr. Cho examined the document. According to this log, Mr. Holt's computer was idle from 2:09 p.m. to 2:16 p.m. The courtroom erupted. Gerald shot to his feet. Objection! Where did that log come from? Catherine turned to the judge. Your Honor, this log was obtained from Mr. Holt's own computer by a forensic analyst. It's a standard activity log that tracks when the computer is being used. Gerald's face was red. Your Honor, this is a violation of privacy. Judge Moreno looked at Catherine. Ms. Wu, how did you obtain this log? Ms. Reeves had access to the company's IT systems before she was terminated. She backed up the logs as part of her documentation of Mr. Holt's activities. Gerald was furious. Your Honor, this evidence is tainted. It was obtained without authorization. Judge Moreno frowned. I'm going to allow it for now, but I'll hear arguments on admissibility. Later. Continue, Ms. Wu. Catherine turned back to Dr. Cho. Dr. Cho, if Mr. Holt's computer was idle from 2:09 to 2:16, what does that mean? It means the computer wasn't being actively used during that time. No keyboard input, no mouse movement. But Mr. Holt testified that he joined the video call at 2:12 and was on camera the entire time. If he was on the call, wouldn't his computer show activity? Not necessarily. If he joined the call and then stepped away from the computer, it would register as idle. So Mr. Holt could have joined the call at 2:12, left his camera on, and stepped away from his desk? Yes, that's consistent with the data. Catherine pulled out another document. Dr. Cho, I'm showing you additional metadata from the Zoom call. This shows the status of Mr. Holt's camera and microphone during the call. Can you explain what this shows? Dr. Cho studied the document. This shows that Mr. Holt's camera was active throughout the call, but his microphone was muted for approximately 32 minutes of the 45-minute call. Is that unusual? It's not unusual for participants to mute themselves during parts of a call, but 32 minutes is a significant portion of the call. And during those 32 minutes, would anyone notice if Mr. Holt had stepped away from his desk? Not if his camera was still transmitting video. If he had a static image or a looped video feed playing, it would appear as though he were still there. Gerald stood up. Objection. Speculation. There's no evidence of a looped video feed. Judge Moreno looked at Catherine. Ms. Wu, can you prove there was a looped video? I can prove it's possible, Your Honor, and I can prove that Mr. Holt's computer has software capable of creating such loops. She turned back to Dr. Cho. Dr. Cho, Did you examine Mr. Holt's computer? Yes, I found several video editing and streaming programs installed, including OBS Studio, which is commonly used to create virtual camera feeds. And could OBS Studio be used to create a looped video feed that would appear on a Zoom call? Yes, it's a standard feature of the software. Did you find any evidence that Mr. Holt used this feature on September 14th? Dr. Cho hesitated. The logs don't show definitive proof that he used it that day, but the software was installed and he had the capability. Catherine turned to the jury. So, let me make sure I understand this. Mr. Holt's computer shows no activity for 7 minutes, from 2:09 to 2:16. The security logs show he exited his office building at 2:09 and returned at 2:34. The parking logs show his car left at 2:11 and returned at 2:33. And during this time, he was supposedly on a video call, but his microphone was muted and his computer was idle. The only way this makes sense is if Mr. Holt joined the call, set up a video loop or static image, muted his microphone, and left the office. Dr. Cho nodded. That's consistent with the data. Catherine turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to enter Dr. Cho's report into evidence as Plaintiff's Exhibit 12, along with the computer activity logs as Exhibit 13, and the Zoom metadata as Exhibit 14. Any objection, Mr. Finch? Gerald stood up, but he looked defeated. I need time to review these reports and to consult with my own expert. Judge Moreno nodded. We'll recess for the day. Tomorrow, Mr. Finch, you can present a rebuttal if you wish, but Ms. Wu, you've made your point. This jury has something to think about. The gavel banged. Marcus sat at the defense table, frozen. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. The alibi he had spent months constructing, the receipts, the timestamps, the video call, had just been dismantled in a matter of hours. Gerald leaned over to him. We'll figure this out. We'll hire our own expert. It's over, Marcus whispered. She proved I could have done it. She didn't prove you did it. She just created reasonable doubt. But Marcus knew the truth, and so did everyone else in that courtroom. That night, Marcus sat alone in his apartment. He didn't call Gerald. He didn't call anyone. He just sat in the dark, staring at the city lights outside his window, thinking about the moment everything had started to unravel. He had been so confident, so sure that his alibi was perfect. He had documented every minute, collected every receipt, rehearsed his timeline until it was flawless. But he had forgotten one thing. Real life doesn't follow a script. Real life has unexpected delays, margins of error, moments that can't be controlled. And Catherine Wu had found those moments. The next day, Gerald presented his rebuttal. He called his own computer expert, a man named Dr. Michael Ross, who testified that the activity log could be inaccurate, that there were other explanations for the idle time, that the Zoom metadata didn't definitively prove anything, but the damage was done. The jury had seen the cracks in Marcus's perfect alibi. They had heard about the exit logs, the parking records, the idle computer. They had seen the bruises on Diana's face. When it was time for closing arguments, Gerald stood at the podium, his usual confidence diminished. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, Ms. Wu has done an excellent job of creating doubt. She's taken small inconsistencies and blown them out of proportion. She's suggested that my client is some kind of criminal mastermind who planned an elaborate scheme to assault his former employee while appearing to be in 2 places at once. He shook his head. But the evidence doesn't support that narrative. Yes, Mr. Holt left his office for a short period. Yes, his computer was idle for a few minutes. But that doesn't prove he drove to Ms. Reeves's home and assaulted her. It just proves that he stepped away from his desk. Gerald walked closer to the jury. Ms. Reeves suffered a terrible experience. Someone broke into her home and hurt her. But she's wrong about who did it. She's traumatized, she's confused, and she's mistaken. The real perpetrator is still out there, and by convicting my client, you'll be letting that person go free. He returned to his seat. The evidence shows that Marcus Holt is innocent. I ask you to find in his favor. Catherine stood up for her closing argument. She walked slowly to the podium, her hands empty, her expression calm. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, Mr. Finch just told you that this case is about doubt. He's right. It is about doubt. Specifically, it's about the doubt that Marcus Holt tried to eliminate by constructing the most detailed alibi I've ever seen. She walked toward the jury box. Marcus didn't just remember his day. He documented it. He kept receipts. He checked timestamps. He made sure every minute was accounted for. But here's the problem. Real people don't remember their days like that. Real people remember sequences, not timestamps. They remember what happened first, then what happened next. They don't remember that they got coffee at exactly 1:47 p.m. unless they went back and checked the receipt. Catherine paused. Marcus's alibi is too perfect. It's too precise. And when you dig beneath that precision, when you look at what actually happened that day, the gaps, the inconsistencies, the unexplained absences, the alibi falls apart. She pulled out a timeline. Let me walk you through what we know. At 2:09 p.m., Marcus exited his office building. At 2:11, his car left the parking garage. At that exact time, his computer became idle. He was gone for 22 to 25 minutes. During that time, Diana Reeves was assaulted in her home, approximately 12 to 15 minutes away from Marcus's office. Catherine turned to face Marcus. Marcus testified that he was on a video call during that time, but the evidence shows his microphone was muted, his computer was idle, and his car was gone. The only explanation that fits. All the evidence is that Marcus joined the call, set up a video feed to make it appear he was there, muted his microphone, and left. She turned back to the jury. Marcus had motive. Diana was documenting his fraudulent business practices. He needed to stop her. He had opportunity. He left his office at exactly the right time, and he had the capability. He had the technical knowledge to create a convincing alibi. Catherine's voice softened. Mr. Finch asked you to find reasonable doubt, but I'm asking you to trust your common sense. Look at the totality of the evidence. Look at Diana's testimony, her injuries, the neighbor who saw someone enter her home. Look at the security logs, the parking records, the computer data, and ask yourself, is it more likely that Diana is lying and mistaken, or is it more likely that Marcus constructed an elaborate alibi to hide the truth? She returned to her seat. Diana Reeves is telling the truth. Marcus Holt is guilty, and I ask you to find in her favor. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, the foreperson stood up. We find in favor of the plaintiff, Diana Reeves. Marcus slumped in his chair. Diana closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. Catherine placed a hand on her client's shoulder. 6 months later, Diana stood in her new office, a small but bright space in a downtown Seattle co-working facility. She had started her own consulting business, using the settlement money from Marcus to get back on her feet. The documents she had backed up, the evidence of Marcus's fraud, had been turned over to federal investigators. Marcus was facing criminal charges. Diana looked out the window at the city skyline. She thought about the day in court when Catherine had dismantled Marcus's alibi, piece by piece. She thought about how close she had come to losing everything, because everyone believed Marcus's story. But Catherine had seen the truth, not because she had dramatic evidence or surprise, witnesses, but because she had looked closely at the details everyone else had dismissed, the 7 idle minutes, the 2-minute discrepancy, the margin of error. Diana's phone buzzed. It was a text from Catherine. Saw the news about the criminal charges. Justice is slow, but it's coming. Proud of you. Diana smiled. She typed back, "Thank you for believing me when no one else did." She put her phone down and got back to work. Marcus Holt learned the hard way that the most convincing lies are built not on evidence, but on the illusion that nothing unexpected could ever happen. He thought documenting every minute of his day made him untouchable, but he forgot that time isn't just about timestamps. It's about sequences, interruptions, and the unpredictable nature of real life. His alibi only worked in a perfect world, and the world is anything but perfect. If you enjoyed this story of meticulous justice, perseverance, and the truth revealed through careful examination, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that the most detailed lies still crumble when someone takes the time to look closely. Subscribe so you never miss a story about justice prevailing through patience and precision. Thanks for watching, and remember, an alibi that seems foolproof is only foolproof until someone asks the questions everyone else forgot to ask.